Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast, season 13, episode 6. Good to be with you all this Tuesday morning. We've got myself and Camille. Welcome back, Camille.
Hello.
Good to have you. Ali is traveling this week, so not able to join us. Should be back next week, but we have Scott Rose back with us. Welcome as always, Scott.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Always good to have Scott back with us. We will be talking more with Scott about what's going on in the show. So I'll give you a rundown of what we're going to be doing today. The Built on Air podcast, we always do 4 different segments, keep you up to date on all the latest. We'll start with our Around the Bases, share what people are talking about in the Airtable communities. Then we'll do a quick spotlight on OnAir, our primary sponsor. Then Camille will be showcasing the new list views that just came out last week during the show. We were the first to break it. We'll do a deeper dive on those. And then Scott's going to show us some automations, working with field orders in the emails that you send in your automations. Then a quick shout out to our community. And then finally, Camille's going to do some more automations on allocating hours to a task. So with that, talk about Around the Bases. So we won't go too much into it because Camille's going to walk us through that in the next segment, but just wanted to highlight they did release a pretty new big feature, list views. The Asana killer is what I've heard people refer to it as. So that is cool. We'll talk about everything, how it works and everything. But so I've seen good reaction and bad reaction. Definitely some things still lacking, but that's cool that they're bringing this feature into play. So excited to see what Camille shows us on that front. Moving on. This one's from the Built on Air community. I always like seeing these. Hannah's really good at drumming up conversations. Of what's going on. I don't know. Scott, did you post in here? So the question was, tell us what you're really good at and love to do with Airtable or integration setups. I don't think
I might have forgotten to post in this one.
Okay, Scott, tell us, what are you really good at?
What am I really good at?
What's your secret power?
I think my secret power might be integrating Make with Airtable, because I spend tons and tons of time in Make. Which is integrating typically Airtable with a whole bunch of external apps.
Okay.
Oh, that was right in Hannah's setup there. She says right at the top, are you great at
Maybe it's
Make?
Yep. What's yours? How about you, Camille? What's your secret power?
I'm always confused as how I ended up making so many scheduling-based tools, scripts, or extensions. So I'm going to say scheduling for some reason.
Scheduling. Yep.
Camille is the scheduling and calendaring expert.
I shouldn't be, but here I am.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, there's some good ones. There's a little foreshadowing. Jeremy, who either next week or the week after will be on our show, and he's going to show us one of the things he talks about here. So excited to see that. Jen talks about translating user needs to software. That's a very good skill. Kavan and Justin talk about how it's enhanced their programming abilities. I can vouch for that. So yeah, Bill, I need a translation on this one. I'm not familiar. Tana 24/7, Airtable 0 for 7. Can anyone translate that?
No.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, neither do I.
So if I knew what Tana is, I would understand, but I don't.
That's what people say. It's a platform similar to Coda. I'm not familiar with Tana, but looks like Justin found it if you Google it. Something. Tana is a new service.
Oh, so I don't feel bad then. If it's new, then I was like, should I know? Should I know what this is?
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like maybe Bill is playing with so Justin says it's invite only mode for now. So very new.
Nice.
Wow, so you have to be cool.
Very
All right.
cool. You know what? I can't wait to see Jeremy's presentation in a couple weeks on the show, because he's a big board gamer, and apparently he's created all sorts of bases for board gaming. I love board games myself, so I'm very excited to see what he's going to show us. And he wrote about that in the thread here.
Yep. Back when the format of the show was a little different, I interviewed Jeremy for about one of his bases, and at the time I wasn't a tabletop game player, but now I am, so I can geek out for two different reasons for that presentation. Looking forward.
What's one of your favorite games?
Well, you see, I'm basic, so I play D&D now, but that's all I need because I don't have time to do anything else.
Wow, nice.
Classic. Very cool. I like Kavan's reading documentation is my superpower. Where else would you hear somebody claim that as their superpower?
I love it.
That's awesome. Cool. So good stuff there. If you haven't posted, we'd love to hear your superpower. Post it in the BuiltOnAir Slack. All right, moving on to Reddit. Somebody posts, this is always a good buying templates. Somebody asked if there's a place to buy templates. This comes up fairly often, so worth mentioning every once in a while. The Airtable does not have a good marketplace for templates like other platforms. I know Notion has a very active template community or marketplace. Airtable is not quite there yet. I hope to see that in the future. But there isn't really a place to, other than the Airtable universe, to go, unless you all know of a place.
I forget the name. There was a service that allowed you to sell your Airtable setups. It was more for like the data, though. It wasn't the entire package. Interfaces didn't exist yet, so it wasn't that. And none of the charts in your dashboards or things like that. But you could sell your database as like a data product. And I'm forgetting the name of what that is. But there, to my knowledge, isn't anything that would like sell your configuration, because it's somewhat difficult to do. I don't think there's a good alternative for that.
And maybe, do you think maybe there's not a huge market for it because once you sell it, anybody could just easily duplicate it for other people? Well, I guess that would happen with any template. That is limited to Airtable. That could happen with any platform.
I think once they allow you to create computed fields by code, you will see people sell base exporters, because you would be able to export. You can currently export all of the like configuration settings for a particular like field, but you can't upload those settings somewhere else if it's a computed field. So I can tell what the formula is for a formula field, but I can't like create a new formula field using that same formula. And once they sort of remove that barrier, I could see somebody creating like an extension or something like that kind of lives in your sidebar, where you could say, all right, I'm done with this template, export it as like a JSON or something like that. And then you use Gumroad or something like that to say, do you want access to this JSON file? Here you go, for money.
Right. That would be very powerful if they open that up someday.
That's the last missing piece to really open up the platform. Melanie, faithful listener, watcher, gives a shout out to Paytable.
Thank you. That is the one I was thinking of.
I was actually looking it up too, and I couldn't find the name. So thank you, Melanie.
Yep. All right. So I think I totally agree, Camille. Once they unlock that missing piece, that will open up the floodgates. All right, moving on to the Facebook community. I think this is interesting. Somebody asked about moving from Salesforce to Airtable, basically like asking for feedback. Is that a crazy idea? Has anybody done that? I know of people that have moved the other way from Airtable to Salesforce. But I do know people that moved from Salesforce. I do think that will be a growing trend in the years to come of enterprises. Salesforce just being way too much for a lot of people, a lot of companies, and just saying Airtable is just much easier. I don't know if, Scott, you've worked with people. I don't know if you've seen people moving away from Salesforce to Airtable.
Yeah, yes, I have a lot of clients. They're still, but not a complete move yet. They've sort of straddled it. They're still doing some stuff in Salesforce. So they're still sending things from Airtable to Salesforce, but the goal is to shift to Airtable. But you bring up a good point there, though, because Salesforce is so high-end and powerful, it's like people do lose a little bit when they come to Airtable, but I've found that people are more than willing to trade that in a lot of times for the simplicity and the ease of use of Airtable. And by the way, Salesforce benefits either way because they're the biggest investor in Airtable.
True. Yeah. So this is kind of like on my prediction list of seeing Airtable eat more and more into the Salesforce world. I came from Salesforce. I used to be a Salesforce admin, and so I'm one that's converted over to Airtable. There is still definitely like a need for Salesforce in certain regards, but I think there is a lot of use cases that Airtable could take.
I see a sentence in here that says, "I'm just nervous about the scalability of Airtable," and yeah. The considerable limitation, depending on how many records you're anticipating, how much historical data you need to keep on hand for any given year. You'll run into that.
Yep. Yeah, and that's definitely something Salesforce has figured out to some degree. I mean, they're definitely scalable, but they're also very slow as well. Salesforce is slow, but they have scaled to very big implementations.
That'll be a very cool thing. You were talking about the API thing that's missing about creating formula fields. I think the other big missing thing is opening up those record limits in Airtable and letting us pay for more record limits. Like if you want 100,000 more records in your base, then let's pay an extra monthly for that. I think that would solve so many problems for people. I think.
Yeah, yeah, that would open up a ton for them. Yep. All right, let's move on to Airtable. Or to Twitter, excuse me. Worth mentioning yesterday, there was yet another outage. It was probably 5-10 minutes it was down, but it impacted the website. Even if you just went to airtable.com, it gave an error message. All the APIs were down, so it was a pretty big outage. I was actually on a sales call when it went down.
So was I. I was just going to say that. So was I.
It seems to always happen.
Yep, I know.
It's right when you're right when the sentence out of your mouth is, so let me tell you how Airtable is so incredible.
Luckily mine, they were already on Salesforce. They just needed consulting work. So they were already bought into Salesforce. So, or sorry, not Salesforce, Airtable. But so definitely a big outage yesterday. I think hopefully it's related to, they have been doing some database upgrades. Although this one definitely wasn't planned in the middle of the morning on a Monday, but it might have been related. So hopefully we see some improvements out of it. All right, next one from our friend Chris Dancy. He's been sharing quite a bit more. It seems like he's been posting quite a bit more, and this is just ridiculous. His life. This is his calendar. And just crazy the amount of tracking that he does, and then he showcases what it looks like in Airtable. So if you ever want to see somebody who just is basically a robot and tracks everything, Chris Dancy is your guy, the most connected man in the world.
Wait, is all this automated? Like I saw there was something about he's counting the time between a Facebook post and a Facebook like. Is all this stuff automated on his end? It must be, right?
I think a considerable portion is automated, but I don't really recall how, because there's so many different systems. Like, we're looking at what is probably several bases being represented together. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on under the hood.
Yeah. A portion of it has to be a decent portion. I don't know if everything is, but yeah, this actually gives me a headache to think about trying to track all of this.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Wasn't there was a whole article somewhere written about him, right? Being the world's most connected man.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's like a mini documentary. He's done TED Talks. Yeah,
really?
There's quite a bit out there.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I've got to do more Chris Dancy research.
Yeah. I've gone down the rabbit hole, and yeah, it's fascinating. So he's a fascinating guy. Yeah, and he'll be doing I think it's still happening. I haven't heard much about it lately, but he did announce dates for their Dare Table, which is the conference that Chris organizes, coming up in May, I believe. So if you want to learn more about Chris and what he's up to, that would be a great event.
May 17th through the 18th in San Francisco.
Awesome. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. One more from Twitter. Yesterday was the 11-year anniversary of the launch of Airtable. So happy birthday to Airtable.
Happy birthday.
11 years old. It's come a long way. I don't know if when this picture was taken, because this is a shared view. So it actually looks fairly recent. I don't think this is the original iteration of Airtable.
I also think that's too newish, because I remember colors being different. Everything was like a lighter, it was more pastel-y, and the view sidebar wasn't like that.
Yeah.
This is from like 2018 or so.
Yeah. Yeah, we should go maybe in a future episode. We'll do a Wayback Machine and look at the changes to Airtable's website.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's cool though. 11 years old. It's not a startup anymore at 11. That's getting close to teenage years.
Was it actually publicly, like, was it available for public consumption in 2012, or is that like when Howie Liu sat down and started?
It says that's when it was launched.
It was launched. I mean, to the public.
I think so. Yeah.
But it was also under a different name when it was first released. This is before my time, but like the name of the company that Airtable isn't Airtable. It's like Data Grid or something like that. Or so it was, I think, originally something else entirely, and then it became Airtable. And I'm wondering if in 2012 it was Data Grid or whatever it was called, and then sometime later it became Airtable, or was 2012 the first year it was called Airtable?
Interesting.
Yeah, 2012. That was still pretty early days. And it's Data Grid. The company, the actual company, is still called Data Grid Inc. is the legal entity name of the company.
Yeah, I was so confused when I saw that at the bottom of one of their emails. It was like an invoice or something.
Yeah.
It was like, who's Data Grid?
Yeah. So it launched as Data Grid. Yeah, I wonder how long before they switched to Airtable. I don't know that.
Wow. Well, happy birthday, Airtable.
Yeah.
11.
So this says it was one of their first versions. So I don't know how early it was, but
I mean, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's move on. Scott, you may be familiar with this community. This is the new Table Forums community. If you haven't been there, you definitely need to check it out. Maybe give us an update. How's it going, Scott?
You know what? I think we're now 2 weeks in to the launch of Table Forums, and what I love about it, what I love the most about it, is that people are just pouring in with tips and tricks. Like Justin here has an incredible tip and trick. I love that people from our community are spending so much time to put things in here that people will then be able to find, when they're searching on Google, which is like the great thing about having a web-based forum. is that it's totally searchable and indexable. And so I'm so grateful to everybody pouring in with these tips and tricks. And I'm also trying to figure out like, what sort of regular tips and tricks I want to do on there. I think anybody who wants to come and share your knowledge with us, it would be awesome. I was thinking maybe even having like some sort of like a weekly like make tip on there, like some video or something. I don't know. This platform is for everybody. It's whatever you guys want to build into this forum. I would love it, and it seems like people are liking it so far. What do you guys think so far?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely the place where you're going to get a response and good answers. But yeah, I agree. Just keeping those tips and tricks are valuable, and bookmark them, and so it's a great resource. So yeah, I found a couple that are really good. There's always question and answers. But for this show, I like kind of more the evergreen content. That these show and tell tips and tricks are really good for that. So Justin is showcasing webhook automation. So kind of talking about some of the problems of accessing your data and how you might want to represent it. So if you're dealing with JSON, this is a great tutorial or dealing with webhooks and want to post to a webhook, either an Airtable one or outside to Make or Zapier or somewhere else. Really good tutorial on how that works. So
yeah, Justin.
Yeah, that's a good one. There was one other that I thought was good from Kavan, providing limited access to Airtable data and schemes. So different tricks and ways on how you can give people limited access. So just really good tutorial of how to, like, with charts and images. So just really, really cool stuff. This is really good evergreen content that will be valuable for years.
I'm so grateful that everybody's sort of creating what will be a future library for people to look up stuff.
Yep.
You said, evergreen content. It's just, it's so wonderful.
What about, is there still founding contributors left to dish out?
Oh, that's a great question. And I believe there are. We were giving out founding contributor badges to the first 49 people who posted in table forums. And I should check how many we have left. Should I check real quick? Let's see. We have given out. Wait, I got to figure out how to get to it.
I noticed this star badge is new. I think, at least originally, I only noticed it said founding contributor, but now you get this. Maybe that was there. No?
Yeah, it was there, but you have to. It doesn't actually automatically put it on your profile. You actually have to go into your profile preferences.
Gotcha.
And then choose to have the icon show up.
Gotcha. Cool.
So if you are a founding contributor and you don't have that star yet, just go into your profile preferences and you can enable it. And I just checked, and we have 32 so far that have gotten the badge. So there's 17 spots left.
Nice.
And the 50th spot, thanks to Camille's great idea, we are saving it for W. Van Hall, the man, the myth, the legend. He answered tons of incredibly complex questions back in the day, and then he just disappeared. He said he was coming back, and then he disappeared. So we're holding the 50th spot for him if he ever reemerges.
Yep. Cool. So still a couple spots. What do you have to do to get a founding contributor?
Oh, yes. Good question. So basically, ask a question or post a tip and a trick or reply to somebody with an answer. Basically, any sort of engagement with the community, even if you know nothing about Airtable, if you are in the next 17 people who post, even if you're just asking a question, you can become a founding contributor.
Nice. Very cool. So if you're listening, now's the time to sign up at tableforums.com. That will be the landing page, and then air.tableforums.com will take you into the Airtable forums. Awesome. Very cool stuff.
Dan, when you're looking at the screen there, you could also tell like how easy it is, like to format things, how easy it is to read and engage in conversations.
Yep.
Which I think is the beauty of the discourse software that we're using on the platform.
Yep. Yeah. It really makes it great for parsing and reading code and everything. So.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on from our around the bases, keeping you up to date, everything. We're hoping there was one teaser, and we talked about this probably 2 weeks ago, that they released documentation about looping in automations, and they said it would be coming out over the coming weeks. It doesn't appear to be out yet, but we think that maybe even during this morning or maybe even during the show, maybe it'll come out. So keep your eyes posted. If you see something, let us know and we'll take a quick peek. So that would be inside the automations, being able to loop through records. So we're waiting on that announcement. All right, let's move on to OnAir. It's an all-in-one toolkit to run your business on Airtable. It's a suite of apps that help you do more with your business. If you rely on Airtable for your business, then you definitely need to check out ontoair.com and sign up and use it. Today, I want to showcase, we did some pretty big upgrades over the weekend. We actually are still kind of working out some minor tweaks. So we do have a warning up there that this week there may be some instability as we finalize things, but we did a huge architecture change to how we do backups. We were running into some scaling issues, especially if you had a lot of attachments in your base, and was causing some issues. And so we kind of, it's been a few months of work, and so excited to finally get that out there. And we also added a couple more minor tweaks. It doesn't change a whole lot of things, but it allows us to do more. So in the coming months, we'll start being able to backing up your actual base schema, so the fields and views and all of that information, as well as comments. So those are coming very soon. Those are in the works. So in the next month or two, we'll be able to back up that information as well. So that's a sneak peek of what's coming. But if you've already been using our backups, a couple new things that I thought I'd share. We now kind of give you a sense of how many records are in each base. As every time we back up, we'll give you a count of how many records in the base, as well as how many attachments are in that base that we backed up. So this one doesn't have any attachments and only 6 records. Then you can also drill down into the table level and see all of the tables in a base and how many records and attachments. And at the table level, it also tells you how many fields there are. So just kind of a cool little additional information that might be helpful in just looking at what's going on metric wise in your base. And we still have, now we made it a little bit easier to understand the backup history. And so this is where you see every time backups happen, and gives you a sense of how many records across all of the bases in your project get backed up, tells you how many new attachments got backed up in that iteration. And so very useful, and now much more scalable. Excited to see what's coming in backups.
Very cool. Dan, how excited are you, or how excited were you when they opened up the API to all those extra things that you can now use in here?
Yeah, that is cool. I'm still waiting on, there are some things that like we mentioned earlier that are still lacking, but it is cool. We actually now have OAuth integration that opens up more. So especially webhooks now, like we'll probably start using webhooks to be smarter about our backups. That's not there yet, but something we're exploring. So yes, I love it when they open up more at the API level.
Totally. Yeah, this is looking great, the new version of this.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. All right, let's move on. Our first segment, Camille, let's learn about new list view. Your screen is now showing.
Okay, so last week, towards the end of our episode, they had just released a new view type for both the data view and for interfaces. So right now I'm currently looking at an interface. And the first use case I thought of for a list view was a base I was making that had to deal with projects, tasks, and hours assigned per task per person. And so I'm going to do my best to explain this sort of use case and how the list view makes it easier to sort of look at all this information together. So list view works by setting up one or more levels. The first level being the smallest amount or the most specific amount of data, if that makes sense, and it probably doesn't. In this case, I have a base that has projects, which are linked to tasks, and each task is listed to one or more hour assigned to that task. So my first level would be those hours. Each person, how many hours are they planned to work on a task? How many hours did they actually work on the task? How many are remaining, etc. Of course, those are all linked to a particular task, which is a level, the next level up. And I could show different fields that are related to this record. So the start date for the task, the end date, the status, and how many total hours are remaining for the hours linked to it. So you'll see the sum of all of this would be 2, pretty easy. And you'll see that same number repeated up here. And then each of my tasks is linked to a project. And once more, there's even more fields that are shown related to the project itself. So the display of your levels is slightly different depending on which level you're looking at. For the outermost level, the first column is going to be bolded. It doesn't have to be the primary field. So I'm now editing this interface just to show what that looks like. Some things are they take a little bit of getting used to find the information that you want to edit. If I want to change which field shows up first for the project level, I would go to Fields under Options, and then by default, it's going to pick your lowest level in your hierarchy. I'm going to go up to level 3, and I'm going to reorder name so it comes first. And you'll see the project name now appears first, and it's bolded versus job number, which isn't. So again, it doesn't have to be your primary field. That is the same for all of your levels. The other sort of special condition is level 1. Again, that's your smallest or lowest level shown in your hierarchy, allows for, I believe they're called nested records, which to me are a little confusing. I'll show that in the data view in a second, but that's the special condition that you get for the smallest level of records. Other than that, if you wanted to change the sort, well, let me start with levels actually. The display of this actually seems to be a little broken, I think because I'm zoomed in. Yeah, that's what it is. If you click on levels, you'll be able to change the order in which things are nested beneath each other. Now, this has to make sense in terms of you have to have a linked record field between each rung on your ladder. So if I were to adjust the order from tasks to projects to hours, it wouldn't make sense because that's not how my linking is for this particular base. For each level, you can change what each record is referred to as. So for tasks and deliverables, I want them to be referred to as task, and you'll see that appear here. Same thing for the projects table. I want that as project. Hours, I just said record as the name. That is useful because it allows you to more easily know when I say, in this case, add a new record, I would know specifically I'm not adding a new task or a new project, I'm adding a new hour. if they had a predefined term in this list that more accurately matched my use case, I would have used that, but they don't. I think we talked about that before, especially with Scott, that their list of predefined terms is not all encompassing, and you can't include your own custom name quite yet. Would love if they could. But you'll see down here this toggle for enable nested records for level 1. This is always going to be level 1. You can't have nested records for level 2 or any level above that. I don't have a self-linking linked record field for the table hour, so I'm not going to be able to do that for this part of the demo. I'll come back to that later. Another thing that you can add to the list view is a prefix field. So if you had a checkbox field for your tables, you would be able to enable the prefix field, select that checkbox, and click to edit it on the left-hand side of whatever the first field you've chosen to display is for that table. So I'm going to go in really quickly and then make a checkbox field so that we could see how that might look. I'm going to plop it in here. And while I'm here, I'm also going to show what the list view looks like in the data view. A lot of it is very similar, but of course, because we're now looking at a different segment of Airtable's UI, you're going to have to, get used to things being in a slightly different location. So if I wanted to change the order and visibility of certain fields, I would go to customize rows. And then it's the same thing where I have to do this one by one, looking at my lowest level of records. I could drag and reorder things. I'm going to add that checkbox field as a prefix field and then get out of here. You'll see that I can now do this, that, and the other. I have not tested this myself. I'm going to test it now to see if I change the display option for that checkbox, does that get recreated? And it does. So that's nice. So it's not just always a check mark. You can control what that looks like. You can only have one prefix field. There's you can't have a checkbox for approved, a checkbox for completed, and have them both show up here. You can only have one prefix field per level. You would click set levels, and that's where you go to change the naming convention for each of your levels. You're limited to up to 3 levels, so you can't have 4, 5, 6, etc. I think that's probably fine for the use cases I've thought of so far, just because this gets really cluttered and clunky, I think, if you have too many things going on at once. I will stop there if there are questions or if there's something that you want me to highlight before I go to how you would sort and filter these views.
No questions yet. I think it's pretty exciting so far.
I think the biggest thing, and I still, even today, I was looking at a list view that I created last week, and just conceptually, you have to retrain your mind to think lowest level is level 1 and then go up from there. Even today, after knowing that, I still switched back.
Yeah, it's when I first heard of this view, to me it seems like it should be the other way around, but I understand why it's set up the way this is, where level 1 is the lowest level and level 3 is the highest level. Originally, I was thinking it should be the other way around, because the view the table I'm currently looking at is hours, right? So I'm looking at these records are from the hours table, these records are from the task table, and this record is from project. originally I was thinking I want to look at the projects table and all of the tasks and hours underneath it. It's the other way around. You have to look at the smallest level of data and then go there to create your view. So a little bit different from how I was originally thinking, but it does make sense. It's not it's not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that confused me too. And yet I guess, some of the logic there is that you always know that level 1 is the lowest, whether you have 2 or 3. Because if they flipped it, your lowest level might sometimes be 2 and might sometimes be 3. And
Yeah.
so this numbering, you always know that level 1 is the lowest.
So I think it makes sense. It's just not the sense I was originally thinking.
Right.
Exactly. Me too. Me too.
So if you want to sort these records, you'll see if you look at the hours, they're kind of all over the place, sorting, much like the order of fields that you're being shown is done by level. So looking at level 1, I would want to sort by probably the person name, I would think, and you'll see all of that gets reordered accordingly. My tasks are also all over the place. So if I wanted to resort my tasks by the prefix probably should do it. So now they're all of my tasks are in order. And then, of course, the same thing for level 3 projects, sorting them by job number, which I think they already were. I just don't have any tasks or hours assigned to projects 1 through 5, but I do have them for tasks or projects 6 and 7. If I wanted to say, don't show me any levels where there aren't any level 1 records, or don't show me any level 3 records if there are no linked level 2, and don't show me any level 2 records if there's no linked level 1, I would go into customize rows and select hide section. And what that will do is remove any of those from view. Just something to note, much like with a grid view, you can select more than one record. You can't select records from different tables. So I can't select a task and then some of its hours. I would have to select, one or more tasks, but not any of the other levels, because they're coming from different tables. It kind of makes sense that you can't do that. It is hard to unselect multiple records to me. There's no button up at the top that clears out your selection. I'm sure I've missed something.
Jan says it also seems that a level 1 in my case doesn't show if the level 2 above links to a synced view. I was hoping it would show that level, but just not let us change anything at that level.
Oh, that's interesting.
That seems like an oversight.
Yeah, I did not realize that.
Yeah, that's a little strange.
That's good. The other thing I realized in playing with it is, like, usually if you want to go to the expanded view, you would click where the checkbox is now.
Yeah.
And you need to click on like the name.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So this will match the whatever fields I say to show me in this list view. Those will be the ones that show up when I click the record. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not, typically, or sometimes it'll be the first grid view in the view bar for that respective table. In this case, it's paying attention to which fields you have turned on. That's useful for, eventually when this is a shareable view type. I believe it's not a shareable view type at the moment. You would have finer control over what details about the project can you see, if instead of it being kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying when you expand it, it's going to show you just those fields that you've already chosen there.
I should see 3 fields for project, and if I click it, I do see those 3 fields.
I like that. That makes a lot more sense than their previous behavior.
It does, and it's the only view type that knows that it's looking at more than one table, and so it's kind of baked into the sort of logic that you've told it what you want to know about a project, and so that's the information it shows you. There's some things that are here from other views, like you can adjust the row height, but you can't, as far as I am aware, you can't color any of your records, which is, I think, unfortunate. I think it would be very useful to have different coloring options set up for each of your different levels. You can filter each of your different views. It's a little bit wonky in interfaces because if you have a filter element on top of what the base filter is for the list view, it gets a little bit strange. But I think the ins and outs of this particular view type does a lot of things that you couldn't do before. There's some like artifacting that I'm not a fan of necessarily. I don't like the placeholder, for instance, for editable fields as you sort of roll over them. And sometimes they stay there, like my cursor isn't currently over Shelby's record there, but that still remains present until I roll over it again. And then sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. There's a little things like that, but overall, it's a very interesting view type that I think a lot of people will be generally happy with for what it allows you to do. And I'm sure they'll continue making tweaks on it in the future.
Cool. Thank you, Camille. Let's move on for time. One quick, Justin says, I found that formula field visible in level 2 and 3 sometimes don't refresh until you move your mouse over them, at least in the interface. But he said, I've been mostly working with the new list element in interfaces, and there are some other UI quirks that I plan on reporting. So definitely room for improvement there. All right. Thank you. Lots to dig in there. Appreciate you sharing that. We're next going to move on. Scott, if you want to share your screen.
Yep.
Scott's going to walk us through some automations and email field order in grids.
Yes. This is, let me see here. Okay. You can see this now, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah, this is just a little tip and trick. It's one of the great mysteries of Airtable, similar to what Camille was just talking about a minute ago, where sometimes you don't really know what fields Airtable is going to choose for different things. This is similar to that in the sense that sometimes you don't know what order Airtable is going to put your fields in. And I'm specifically referring to automations when you find a bunch of records and then you want to send an email showing a list of those records, either a grid or a list of those records. It isn't always exactly what you would expect. And I figured out 2 little tiny tricks that will make this perfect for you every single time. Basically, let's take a look at our database here. This is, just a pretend travel itinerary demo, well, that's the name of the base. Just a bunch of countries and cities that we may want to visit. And I've just checked off a bunch of different places that we want to send out in the email to people. So, we want to send out the email and we want to say, hey, these are the current cities that we're currently thinking about for our itinerary. And we've got all these fields here. And I'm going to go into automations. And this step right here says that, well, up here, we'll run this on a scheduled time. And then here for the find records step, we're going to do a find for the itinerary table. We're going to find records based on condition, and we're going to search for only the records where we've checked the checkbox. So if I test this, it will say that it was successful because it found all these records that I checked off. And then we get to the part where we're going to send the email. So what I did was I inserted the grid of records here into this email, and I've turned on the fields that I want to see. Now, when you see it like this here, and I go back to the data here, you can see that it actually matches the field order here. And let's see what happens when I actually preview this. All right. So when we look at this, what you can see is I think, does this match or does this not match? Let's see.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one does. Let me just go back here for a second. Okay, perfect. And oh wait, city, rating, and primary contact are the last three. And you said and that's what it looked like in the preview?
It did.
Okay, perfect. So that is working the way that we city, rating, primary, right. So that's actually something where you may be thinking, okay, well, that's fine. You know, that's working very well. And the reason for that is because it, by default, will take your topmost view here and it'll put your fields in that order. But this is where it gets a little bit tricky. What if you actually wanted a couple of these fields? Like let's say I just shuffled these around. Like let's say I wanted the primary contact to be over here and I wanted the record ID to be here. And let's say that I actually wanted to hide a couple of these fields. Well, I'm doing two things at once. One is I'm shuffling these things around, and then I'm also going to hide a few of these. So what happens is, let's say, that this view is actively used by people, and, they don't really need to see a lot of these columns. So, I'm just going to hide those columns, but this is still the topmost view. And you could see they're still in this order. Well, I mean, I just reshuffled them in this order. And now when I go into automations, now watch what happens when I try to generate a preview. So what it does is it takes those two hidden fields and it moves them to the end. So if you come back out here, right? So it's email, country, and rating, itinerary name, email, country, and rating. And so what's confusing here is that, I'm just going to generate this again, right? It takes the hidden fields and it puts them at the end. And now if I were to make them unhidden, then it's actually going to put them in this order. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out about the hidden fields. But what happens if then there gets a lot of other complexity, which is if somebody makes this view a personal view and they move it, well, I'm the only user in here, so I can't make it a personal view, and they move it down lower in your views, what becomes very interesting then is things get even more confusing because Airtable will hang on to that view once it's a personal view, even if it's moved somewhere else in the list. Airtable will hang on to that as your former top view. So even if you actually move your views around, it gets very confusing. So the two confusing things are with personal views and hiding fields. Anytime you hide a field, if you want it in that email, it's just going to put it at the end. And if you make it a personal view and you move it, Airtable is always going to consider that your topmost view until you make that view collaborative. Move it back to, I think you have to move it back to the top. You have to do a bunch of things to get Airtable to notice your new top view. So the answer to solve all of those problems, I think those were at least two problems, maybe three problems. The way to solve all of this is when you do your find records, instead of finding your records based on a condition, what you can do is you can find your records based on a view instead. And then it'll always pull from that particular view. So what you can do out here is let's just duplicate this view and we will just call it, email these records or whatever you want to call this. And I will filter this view to the email is checked. So that used to be my condition in the automation, but now it's a filter for this view. And now I'm just going to shuffle these around, rating, country, email. And now what's going to happen is when I choose this view, and I'll test this action here, when we go to the send an email step, it will be tied to that view. So you don't need to be guessing which view is the top view. It will, and you'll notice here, by the way, it's only showing me the 4 fields that are actually visible. And so now if I update this and I generate a preview, you'll see that it pulls exactly the fields from that view. So what you can do, wait, did I click on that? Let me see, here we go. So what you can actually do is control your emails by setting up a special view, and it's not even going to let you choose those hidden fields, but whatever changes you make here in this view, and no matter where you move this view, even if it becomes a personal view, your emails are going to be in the order, the fields are going to be in the order that you want. So maybe that was a long way of sort of explaining that, but hopefully, hopefully that makes sense.
It's the only way to explain it because it's silly.
It's silly. It was actually the personal view thing that really threw me off too.
Yeah, no, that's a great trick that, yeah, it would take forever to figure that out. So very useful. Awesome. Thank you, Scott, for sharing that. Real quick, Camille, if you want to get ready, I'll give a shout out to our community at BuiltOnAir. We'd love to have you join us. I was just looking, we're approaching 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So I'll give a shout out to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to get to 1,000 in the next couple months. And so please subscribe there. Join us at builtonair.com/join. Get into our Slack community, and also join the table forums as well as part of that. All right, final segment from Camille on, actually, let me intro it, on automations and task allocating hours to a task. There you go.
So we are looking at the same base. The use case that I went over, a little bit ago involved having tasks assigned to a project and each person having a certain number of hours they're supposed to work on a task. And then we want to track how many of those hours should they actually use. Are they over budget? Are they under budget? Etc. And I have a series of automations in this table that should hopefully make creating this a lot easier. So this is something that, the concept of a junction table where you have several records linked to each other that are kind of annoying to create. So in this base, I think I have something like 7 employees set up. And if for each and every task, you'll see I might have 5 to 7 tasks per project. If I had to one by one create those 7 employees for each of those tasks, that's a lot of time and it's annoying and I don't want to do it. So I set up some automations that should hopefully, if I do them, work. You'll notice that an error has occurred and I don't know if that's something that I did wrong or if it's a problem with the list view. So I'm going to refresh the page and we'll see what happened. That task did not get created. It doesn't seem like. So I'm going to go into a stable view and I'm going to actually do this from the task table. If I create a new task, it's going to get shuffled around a bit. What should happen? Oh, okay, it already happened. This new task that I just created has every person in my people table. I generated a new junction table record in the hours table for that task. So if I give this a number really quickly, just so that we can see it, and if I go back to my list view, there you go. These are all those. This is the brand new task that I generated. Here's one record for each of them. And now I can quickly say, well, Felix needs to do 6 hours, Harvey needs to do 5, I need to do 8, etc. But I don't have to one by one select each and every person's name. That is accomplished with a single automation. You'll see all the other ones are turned off. So I have it set up whenever a new record in the task table is created. I have a fairly simple script that's running that takes the record ID for the task record that was created, getting all of my tables and fields set up. And then what I'm doing is looking at my people table and saying, for every employee, create a new record in the hours table that is linked to the task that was just created. That's that record ID. And then the person.id is I'm looping through each of the people records from the people table. I also have something in here that will match if it can find an Airtable collaborator with the same name as, the record in the people table. Sometimes that's useful if you want to use collaborators to hide certain tasks and hours from other collaborators using an interface, for instance. You don't actually need this line. It's actually just these first two that are relevant for this use case. I'm going to zoom in slightly in case anyone wants to pause the video eventually to see what this script is doing. And then from there, it's just creating any of those linked records that are needed. Some things that you could do to tweak this for your particular use case. You might not need to do every single person in your people table. If you have everyone from your whole company, not everyone is going to be working on your project. So maybe there's a field that says, if it's a project for marketing, only include people in the marketing department. And you could accomplish that by having a view set up that, is only for marketing, and some logic somewhere in the script that will find the appropriate view. That's just one way that you might tweak this a little bit, but that's the general idea.
Nice.
Awesome. Very useful creating that table. Cool. Thank you, Camille, for showing that. And that concludes our show for today. So thank you all. Next week, we'll be back for a new episode. Looks like we didn't get any feature releases, or nobody gave us a heads up. So maybe coming, I don't know, this afternoon, we'll see. Maybe next week we'll talk about it. So until then, we'd love to see what you all are building on air. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.